Hey everyone, it is Carol Foderick from the Carol Foderick Real Estate joining you again today for season 1, episode 4 of The Best Thing About Real Estate Is. Today, we are going to be talking about, I don't know, what some people might consider a controversial topic. It is landlord life. The stories, the myths, the lessons that you've learned. So I'm joined today again by Hartley and Katisha Rasheed. The three of us share I won't say it's unique because I think there are, many more women entering this field, but we are all residential landlords. And so we're here today to talk about our experiences, both in the field personally, but also as real estate professionals that, help clients acquire, manage, rent their properties on an ongoing basis. So inquiring minds want to know what compelled both of you ladies to become residential landlords here in the Greater Toronto area. Caitlin, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I became a landlord, I would say, in the last 3 years.
Okay. So relatively recently.
Yeah. And during, I would say the frenzy of both high rental values and a lot of potential tenants out there that were, of high quality, I would say. I got into buying an investment property because I wanted to build generational wealth. I was, trying to figure out my retirement plan for the long run. And I also wanted to be able to experience on the ground running what it was like to own my first investment property and be a landlord for the first time, because my intentions were to buy multiple and not having to rely on a property management company. But yeah, that was my reasoning.
So you said have you changed your perspective at all about owning real estate now that you've been a landlord? And we'll unpack, Katisha, why you got into it as well. But I'm curious because you used a past tense. Has that changed your perspective at all once you've been a landlord?
Yes, I think my idea of being a landlord has changed, definitely. It is a full-time job. And I mean, of course, we have property management companies that do exist for that reason. But I definitely didn't realize how much time it does take and energy to make sure that your rental stays in good standing. You have a good relationship with your tenant. So at this point, I would say have my hands dipped in different types of real estate investments.
Yeah, so we're going to come back to that because I think it's important to understand there's different avenues by which you can come this.
And what might be better for you may not be better for someone else, right? So
that's true.
I think right now between pre-construction investing and resale investments, I've leaned more towards pre-build, but we can talk about that in a later time.
So we share the unique perspective, and to give some context to our viewers, you talked about generational wealth. There is no next generation of Caitlin Hartleys yet. Like you've really gotten out in front of us. Somebody who's buying investment properties in their 20s. Do you think that, and it's something that Katisha and I also, share that similar path to becoming landlords at the similar stage in our lives. But tell me, Caitlin, do you think that your 20s is too young to be getting into the real estate market?
No,
from an investment perspective.
I think the sooner the better. I mean, when the time's right for you, for sure, aside from just having the money and the capital to be able to do that. I think if I could have gotten into the market sooner, I definitely would have. This was just a path that was set out for me. And I'm glad that I did get my foot into the door as soon as possible. I mean, although I do have a background in real estate, made it a lot easier for my very first purchase to be an investment as opposed to a primary residence. So
so your first purchase was an investment property. It wasn't a primary residence.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Katisha, you also became a landlord in your 20s. Talk about what led you to that when you first started thinking about real estate.
I mean, this goes back to my dad again, who was a huge real estate investment was a huge thing for him. And again, just growing up, I saw him be a landlord. And when it was time for me to move out of the family home, right away, it was like, we're going to figure this out and you're going to do a purchase. And so, I saved up for my half of the down payment. And then he gave me the other half, which was a loan. And from that, that condo made some money. And then from there, I bought my first freehold. And that was rented out to, a lovely family. And it was just great to see that your asset was, you got a family in there and they're helping you pay your bills. And, it just made sense for me that, I'm a huge, I believe in real estate. I believe in the power of real estate and where it can take you.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So I've shared, with anybody who will listen in the past, I've been in real estate for, 20 years. I became a real estate investor early in my 20s. I bought my first rental property at 23. At that time, it was $518,000, 500, which I can promise you felt like all of the money in the world.
Yes.
When you sit down with your on closing and they do the amortization schedule and you see what your actual payment is going to be with all of the interest, and I nearly had a heart attack. Of course, that was almost 20 years ago now. The property has done really, really well. But my path was a little bit different. I needed a place to live and I bought a triplex in a part of the city that was not that popular. People are going to laugh when I say this. It was the Junction, which at that time in the early 2000s was not a popular place to live. You bought in the Junction because you were priced out of High Park or Bloor West Village, and Roncesvalles wasn't even that popular yet. So it was an affordable price point, but the Junction then wasn't what the Junction is today. So bought it because I needed a place to live. I lived in one unit. My brothers lived in the other two units, and we rented the other unit out. And I lived in the worst unit. They lived in the slightly larger main floor. I lived in the basement. They lived in the slightly larger main floor. And then we rented out the big second and third floor unit. And
smart.
It was smart, but it was also like a bit of a risk. All of my, I always joke with people that I went to my very first real estate closing at 23. I didn't even have a car yet. I took the bus to go to the lawyer's office to sign off on the paperwork. So so it was definitely a sacrifice. I did have to, all of the things that, other people were doing in their early 20s when they had their first, jobs. I was a real estate receptionist at that time. So I think I was making $11.50 an hour when I bought that property. And it was, combined effort between my brother's salary. He was just finished school. I think he might have actually still been in university working part-time on the side.
Yes.
And it was definitely a sacrifice for all of us, but one that's turned out to be, really lucrative, in the end. I always joke with people that if you came to visit me in my very first apartment, it's sided on a laneway. So I would explain it to people like approach the house and then go to the left side and you'll see a door off the laneway that looks like if you were going to buy drugs, that's where you would go. And that's my front door. So it was definitely not, the first purchase that everyone aspires to, but it has been an incredible, jumping off point for, generational wealth that I've been able to, create. How about you guys? So, sometime, Caitlin, you're relatively new, but Katisha, it's been a couple of decades for you.
Yeah.
If you could go back and say something to yourself as a young investor, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say if you can buy and hold it, hold it. I think when I think back to all the properties that I once owned, rented, and then ended up selling,
keep it if you can.
Keep it if you can. It can be tough. But if I could have told my younger self that, hang on to it, that would have been a smarter move.
So interesting, because part of the conversations that we have with our first-time buyer clients is always, this is going to be a home for you to live in, and it's got to make sense for you financially, logistically. It's got to spark joy when you walk in. But can we also set up our first-time buyer clients so that if being a landlord is something that or owning a piece of investment real estate and having that in their portfolio is something that appeals to them, can their first purchase be that first cornerstone for building a real estate portfolio? Caitlin, you work with a ton of first-time buyers and share that perspective with a lot of them.
Definitely.
What's the conversation sound like?
For many first-time buyers, depending on if their intentions are to eventually become investors, and maybe at the time, based on the money that they do have saved, they don't have enough to be able to buy their, ideal property. My recommendation is always to get their foot in the door in some way, shape, or form.
I agree.
Whether it be buy a condo or, semi, maybe it's not in the area that they desire, but it's close enough where they can manage it, themselves, and have a tenant, pay down their mortgage, and maybe in a few years or in best case scenario, a couple months, they are in a position where they may want to sell it, right? But there are a few factors that play a part in this. And then they can use the money that they might have gained in the equity and that one asset to buy their forever home, or maybe their very first property where that they'd be a little bit more comfortable to be in a location which they desire to be in. And it would have the space to accommodate them and their loved one or loved ones.
Yeah, I think it's a really, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I agree. It's like we're in the business of helping people get homes, and, you just want them to get into the market before you're priced out of it. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of salaries aren't moving at the same pace as real estate. So if this is a good time for you, let's make it happen. And going back to you, it may not be the neighborhood that you want to be in, but at least you're in the market, and we can move from there. There's lots of strategies that we can do to like get a tenant in there to help with the payments and, take that equity out down the road and keep building that portfolio.
I think the biggest thing right now for a lot of people is the challenge between trying to keep up with the market. Although we do have, ebbs and flows, we have sellers markets, buyers markets, it can, come more frequently than not, but trying to save as much money as you are, trying to keep up with the market changes and the conditions of the marketplace, the values for the type of property that you want. Most of the time, based on average salaries, you're not able to, right, put enough money aside where that you can buy that property that you want a year from now or 2 years from now. So whether, like Katisha said, you buy something that you may not necessarily want to live or see yourself living in right out the gate. Because
like
I think
for a long
people,
term, it's a way to get into the market.
I think people think that there's this, American dream. The first house that you buy is going to be your dream home, and not always is it the case. But it's a path to getting there.
I agree. Build equity, be able to realize some capital appreciation, hopefully pay down your mortgage. And then, one of the questions I always have for first time buyers, if they're not looking at a condo, is would you consider something with a rental suite in it so that, maybe right now the main and second floor is more than enough space for you. But could you rent out the basement? Could we buy something that has an accessory suite? Or also super popular right now is a discussion about garden suites, laneway suites. Can you buy something and then add value by creating accessory, dwelling unit for a family member, a friend that, can help offset some of that cost. So I think there's lots of different paths. We talk about first-time buyers, investors, but a lot of people don't seek out to become real estate investors. It sort of happens, through satisfying other needs in life. So an example I always give people is like you've got, teenagers that are on the cusp of thinking about where they're going to go to school. In addition to tuition, if you're leaving, you're leaving home to go away, parents are often absorbing the incredibly high cost of student housing. And so we work with a lot of our buyer clients to be able to work to purchase student rentals. So if your kid is going to be at Queens and Kingston for 4 years or longer, instead of paying $50,000-$60,000 in housing costs, which is a realistic expectation when you factor in all of the costs. Does it make more sense, especially in some of those really, I'm going to say low value, but more affordable markets, to just buy a house and then to be able to split it with other students?
Yeah, it's a smart move. It really is. Because a 5-year program, and that's a lot of money that could be paying down a mortgage. And especially if you've got renters in there.
Even if you only keep it for the time that your kids are at school there, it does often make financial sense. We talk a lot with our clients about the idea of buying something. So I'll take a step back. A lot of the conversations around investment properties, when people are looking to buy, it's not even necessarily for their own retirement. It's a means to be able to give their kids a nest egg so that they'll have a foothold in the market when the time comes. I can't tell you how often I talk to people now who are in their 40s or their 50s who have kids and talk about the fact that they don't know how their kids are going to be able to get in the market. So when they have the means to do so, they will buy an investment property with the expectation that their kids are eventually going to live in it, or at least by the time their kids come of age, they'll have a bit of a nest egg to be able to gift them with, to say, here's an asset that has, hopefully paid a big chunk of itself off. They're able to leverage it into something that they do want to live in.
There's so much to think about, when you're starting a family and what that future will look like. And real estate's a good place to start. There's lots of things to invest in, but real estate is a really great one to help them out along the way.
So is being a landlord, is it a bad word? Is there a negative association that comes with the word landlord? It sounds icky, doesn't it? When you say it, you think about the feudal roots of what that, it's the feudal system of being the lord of the land. It doesn't sound friendly, right?
It's come a long way. I wonder. It's kind of funny that it's still, landlord is still the word that we use. That there's not a new word that has come out to
property owner. I guess as we use it probably a little bit more commonly.
Yeah,
but,
I think that's a bit of a shift there with property owner. But I guess back in the day it was
the lord of the land.
Knocking on your door, where's my rent?
And I think that it's also, it's different perspectives, right? If you close your eyes and think of what a landlord looks, everybody is going to have their own perspective. Sometimes it's shaped on an experience, positive or negative. But it's been really interesting to see kind of how that evolves. What do you think the biggest apprehension most people have from being a landlord? Because I think that most people can make a financial case to buy something now. I mean, we talk about this a lot. The 50-year trajectory of values in the GTA has been 5.5% for the last 50 years. That doesn't mean 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. There is some volatility there, but generally speaking, there's nobody, that lives in our area that says real estate 25 years from now will be worth less than what it's worth now.
For sure.
So I think people see the value in becoming landlords. What do you think stops some people from doing it?
I think there's this apprehension for a lot of first-time investors. They hear these stories on the media, right? There's
horror stories.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, between there being horror stories for both from the landlord perspective and tenant perspective, I think the highlight is on, a renter, for example, not making payment for their rent, right?
Okay, so tenant vetting, tenant vetting.
Yeah.
So how do you vet how do you do a great job of vetting a tenant for a landlord client of yours? Because when we work with a buyer client to buy an investment property, our services also include assisting them with finding a tenant for that property. So what does great tenant vetting look like?
I would say that we go through quite a bit of a deep dive into their background. I mean, surface level would be credit checks, pay stubs, job letters, and things like that. But we actually go as far as to finding social medias, which, I mean, I think a lot of people don't really speak of as well on the tenant side of things. So going through social medias, figuring out if they have LinkedIn accounts, and really doing a deep dive on all of the references that they've provided to make sure that we are getting factual information. Because I think the concern is more, are they actually providing legitimate documentation, which we've done a really good job at finding out.
There's some new tools that have come out as well, like Single Key, which I found really great. To once they sign the rental application, you can get their permission, upload it, and then you can pull information from a third party to get a good sense of if information is true. Because unfortunately, there is a lot of scamming happening these days, and so you do have to be really careful.
Or work with a professional to know what they're doing. Because I do see landlords, whether they're new or very experienced, making a lot of errors around the tenant vetting process and also execution of the documents, right? So this isn't like a handshake agreement anymore like it was years ago, where here's your rent and this is when it's payable. Like the documentation has to be absolutely completely accurate, and it's specific documentation. It's the RTA or the OSL in agreement to the the AREA forms. So it is there's something
more rules around it now, and it's important that if you are a landlord, that you understand the rules and your tenant understands the rules. That it's not, like you said, it's not just a handshake. Here's the keys, and
it is important. You're in a legal agreement with somebody. And unlike agreement of purchase and sale, where a buyer comes forward, offers a certain amount of money, seller sells to that, and then the transaction is done and everyone goes their separate ways. You are in relationship with this person. So not only making sure that it's financially viable, but also that both the landlord and the tenant understand their rights and responsibilities. And I think that's an important consideration because, if you're interested in become a property owner or landlord, do you fully appreciate the responsibilities that come along with the job? Because one of the biggest objections that I get is, well, I don't want to take calls in the middle of the night. Like, I don't want to be responsible for that. And I can share, my perspective on that is that, I have done a lot of jobs. I work really hard selling real estate, but, and I make a really good living at it, but owning real estate has made me a fortune. And I don't say that to impress anyone. It's just that there has been nothing in my life that's been as lucrative as owning real estate, not just selling it. And it's an important part of the conversation.
I think that's the benefit of being a landlord. You have this great responsibility and you are able to set the expectations right out the gate. I think it doesn't come back just to what's signed on paper, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all human. So having that relationship with your tenant is super important. From the first initial meeting in person, exchanging of keys, there needs to be a level of trust, expectation as well.
Both ways. Yeah, I agree. Landlords have responsibilities that are important. If you're going to provide a home for somebody and they're paying you for that service, this isn't just cash a check. And I think a lot of people fail to understand that. So
you are going to get calls in the middle of the night, like there's the sink's clogged. Yeah. And, you've got to go over there and get it unclogged.
It's funny because although that is true to some extent, I mean, you can mitigate that with a property management company, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But I don't know that I've ever had a more lucrative paying job than being a landlord, because to be truthful, any amount, like it is a job, and any financial reward you're going to receive from work put out there is going to be effort that goes into that. And so it's important to remember that being a landlord does come with responsibilities. It's not just cashing checks.
No.
Not.
So I'm curious to know, property manager, no property manager, because I self-manage mine. Caitlin, do you have a property manager?
I do not. But then again, I decided that because of the fact that the properties that I had acquired, they are very close in proximity that I can get to really easily. And again, expectation setting, right? So if there's anything urgent that needs addressing, contacting me during certain hours, and under what circumstances is considered urgent, right? Because not what may be urgent to you may not be urgent to someone else. And I think there's a fine line there. For people that are buying properties further out, like you said, Kingston, Ontario, for example, where, maybe a child of theirs, a child of theirs is occupying the unit and they have other students, you're not close, you hire a property management company to check in regularly or periodically. And again, although your child might be living in the unit, it gives them the opportunity to not have to manage it as well, right? While they're going to school and dealing with other things. So it's worth your while between the gas and time.
Property manager, no property manager for yours?
No property manager. But, I have good support behind that.
Good relationships with contractors, like and I think that's true. Like once you've been a landlord for a little while, you've got a great plumber on call. You've got an electrician and tradespeople that you trust that can go over there and deal with it on your behalf. And it's interesting because I think it's also the asset class that you own. So, obviously if you are in a multi-res situation, like you own a house that has 5 units in it, or my goodness, even something bigger, there is more involvement and there's going to be more property maintenance. But if your investment property is a condo inside a building that already has building management that, manages all of the common elements, the exterior envelope, and all you're responsible for, say, is like the appliances and the plumbing fixtures inside, the scope of what you might be responsible for is significantly lessened, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's also when you own a multi unit house, there's the friction too that you have to deal with between tenants.
Can be. Sometimes they get along. I always joke, like I'm in the WhatsApp chat group for some of my rental properties, and they get along like family. So I think it's always and to your point about
that's good for you, because I know someone that has a multi-unit and there's an upper floor and then there's someone in the middle and then there's basement, and the middle floor will take the broom handle and hit the ceiling because she's walking around. Like it's just like some, where you've got like those
like setting the expectation that it's like where, and understanding what the tenant profile is going to be for the property that you own. So if you've got a senior, is it appropriate to move in students? Maybe not. That's not going to be fair to either of them, because the students are not going to have a normal living experience if the other person's going to bed at 8:00 or vice versa. So I do always try to match tenant profiles, where possible, just to be sure that it's going to be a good fit. Because I don't want anybody to, come into a rental property.
And those are the things that, you
not enjoy their experience.
And you learn that over time. I think that's part of the learning curves of being a landlord. You don't realize until you're in the thick of it that maybe for next time I won't do that. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Like you fail forward a lot being a landlord. Yeah. So I want to talk about the financials, because I think we talked a little bit about the fact that, some people take the perspective that this is just cashing a check, and there isn't. We've dispelled that. I think people need to understand that there are costs. Is the reason for the undertaking of buying an investment property? We talked about, leaving a legacy. Is it always financially lucrative right out of the gate? Because I think this is another misconception, especially here in the GTA, where our purchase prices are relatively high. The idea of buying for cash flow or capital appreciation. And I always talk to people about the difference. Do either of you want to unpack that? Because I know we talk about it a lot with our clients. So I think buying for cash flow versus capital appreciation. Yeah. Caitlin, cash flow. Where are you buying for? Where and what are you buying for cash flow?
Cash flow, you're buying probably further outside of the GTA, where that it may be in, I would say, a student zoned area where it's close to school, university, college, where you can get quite a bit of students in a home, for example, where it's allowed, of course. And that would be in a situation, I would say, people looking for passive income. So many elderly families, where that their intentions are not to gain profits in the long run on the asset itself, but more so to help offset their living expenses elsewhere. So
great example. So somebody who buys for cash flow, you're buying not for the long-term capital appreciation on the property. You're buying for the $1,000 a month difference that you're going to be able to recover from the property. So your carrying costs are, $3,000 on the property, but your income in is $4,000. And then you're taking that out and using it to subsidize your lifestyle. In the greater Toronto area, that's often not the case. No. Investors, much bigger purchase prices, they are buying for capital appreciation. So, and sometimes buying with a cash flow deficit to be able to achieve that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Katisha?
Yeah. It's like I recently purchased something and it isn't cash flow positive.
Cash flow negative for now. Yeah,
exactly. Negative for now. And, but it's, it's
phenomenal neighborhood.
Great neighborhood. And I mean, it's a long game, we're probably going to sit on it for at least 5 years to actually see some real
great capital appreciation. And in the meantime, you're subsidizing it on a monthly basis because over the long term, the bigger win will be, so you're not looking at the $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
You're looking
and I think
at
that's a misconception for a lot of people where they think that every investment is going to be cash flow positive.
Not the case.
Right. But there's different angles to look at it because what does that look like in 5 years or 10 years from now?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's it. And I think rarely right out the gate is it ever cash flow positive with the same level of capital appreciation as it is in areas where it's highly desired. So unless your down payment is much larger, where that will be the case, not very common in the city of Toronto anymore.
So short-term rentals, an opportunity to get higher cash flow than what you would get from a regular monthly rental. And I get a lot of clients that ask about this, right? They want to Airbnb. Huge restrictions around Airbnb all over. And it used to be, we had conversations with clients about buying cottages because it allowed them lifestyle and investment. So you could utilize the cottage for 4 weeks of the summer and then rent it out the other 4 weeks and be able to help offset the cost of having a vacation home. But of course, post-pandemic, almost every municipality in Southern and Central Ontario has implemented short-term rental bans or strict bylaws. So for somebody who is looking to buy short-term rental or a rental property and then using it for short-term, how would you advise them?
Speaking with an accountant, first and foremost, understanding the tax implications. I think right now more than ever, there's been a lot of changes, as you mentioned, for Airbnbs and being able to run them and being profitable on them. And again, also back to the stats. So how often are short-term rentals being leased in those areas? So you can know ahead of time,
right? Like I think you look at the amount that you can make per night, because that's essentially you're running like a hotel. Yeah. People often don't consider all of the costs that go into it, right? Out like fully furnishing everything right down to knives in the drawers and sheets, and then the changeover.
It can be really lucrative. I've got a client right now. She lives on the main floor, so it's one of the rules with Airbnb that you have to occupy the property in Toronto. Yeah, in Toronto. Yeah, and so she lives on the main floor. Well, she has the upper part of the house, and then she does Airbnb in the basement, and it's been amazing for her. There's some upfront costs, but it's booked out like solid.
Yeah. Good location. Good location. And she's doing it compliant with the local regulations, which is really important.
Exactly.
So, but it is important. She's got to factor in what the cost of her time is to do the management. So how often a day is she responding to rental inquiries for, leads coming in? Yep. How long does it take to turn it over? What are the costs associated with the short-term rental? So sometimes when you factor in the time,
there's work involved. It's not
much more work that's involved in a long-term rental. So
and you've got to be prepared for that. You have to have the mindset. Not everyone's going to be happy. Yeah. You're going to get calls late at night.
You're on somebody's vacation. You have to remember, and they have expectations of what that vacation is going to be look like.
That's the thing. I think people think, bought a property, like you said, cashing a check, and there's no other responsibilities. You just walk away.
Not the case.
And until they tell you they're giving notice, but that's definitely not the case. Where, you're getting those phone calls where I don't like this, or so-and-so so nice, or I lost my mail, or whatever it is.
And I think, you mentioned on the difficult tenants, and certainly there are, to be clear, in any market, there are going to be some scary stories that come out, and those are the ones that tend to make the news. But, we find ourselves in a market where we have also never had a more highly qualified, amazing pool of tenants who are out there that are, high income earners, or not even high income earners, but just solid, great credit, great tenant profiles. Like, people
we
that
do
would
so
make
much
tenants.
vetting. Like when we do a lot of leases on this team, and we do a lot of vetting, and I see these profiles come in, and I'm like, they should be buying.
They should be buyers, but for whatever reason, they choose not to be. And it's important to remember that, sometimes you are, renting to somebody that is just for whatever reason, could be a homeowner, but chooses not to be, or just won't be a homeowner. And that's okay too. So And so let's just talk in closing about representation of landlord clients and tenants, because we do both on this team. And it's a big part of what we do. Hundreds of lease transactions a year. We are representing landlords to find them great tenants and make the process as easy as possible. And we are, I think, have the best offering in the marketplace. Like if you want to be a landlord and you want real estate professionals are going to walk you through not just the acquisition of the asset and finding something that is going to be lucrative for you in the long term and meets all of your goals, but also assisting you in making sure that the property runs as smoothly as possible by finding great tenants. We can help with that. But let's talk about the tenant side, because we also represent a huge amount of tenants. So if you are a tenant right now and you're thinking about a lateral move, what does that look like? What does great tenant representation look like from a real estate professional?
Preparing all of your documents as much as you can in advance. Again, we do have quite a bit of a process and a system in place where that being able to find a rental and move in can be an enjoyable experience and not a daunting or very emotionally exhausting one, if following the steps that we do set out for all of our tenant clients. Aside from just preparing your documentation, I would say getting all of your preparation with your current landlord, potentially, because a lot of our tenants are moving from one rental to another. So having that relationship and rapport with your current landlord to let them know, hey, like I'm going to be moving out within the next, 60 days, ramping up for your search, right? I think is half the battle.
Yeah. I mean, we're really good at like seeing potential roadblocks for them as well and finding solutions to help them get to, be able to rent. We do come across a lot of people like having a really hard time. And then so we take a real deep look into their documents that they provided and, find ways to help them.
It's sometimes just the way it's being presented to the landlord who's not clear on, what their situation is, and we can help them find. Exactly. And it's a great honor to be able to work with our tenant clients to be able to place them in homes. So that's amazing. Yeah. So let me ask you guys in closing. So if you had a client who approached you and said, listen, I'm sitting on some equity in my home, because a lot of landlords, that is how they make the jump. People assume that landlords have huge amounts of money sitting in the bank. No, often it's leverage funds used against an asset that they have that has grown in value or that they've paid off a substantial amount. So if you're, in a house and you've got a $500,000 mortgage, but it's worth, 1.2, and you're sitting on equity and you've got some access to funds to be able to put as a down payment, but you're apprehensive about, is this for me? I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm a landlord. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, it's trial and error, right? Like every situation is going to be different. What I experience as a landlord will be different from what you're going to experience. And it does take time to adjust to the role. It's like a new position but
good guidance, you can get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Caitlin, how about you? What would you say to somebody who's on the fence thinking like, should I become a landlord?
I would say it's worth their while.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, again, the only way to grow generational wealth and as quickly as I have been able to has been in real estate. I don't think I've found any other investment opportunity where that there's not so much risk, where I've been so profitable already just in the last 3 years, let alone.
And we do a lot of like profiling and showing them the numbers, like where that can,
on the investment side,
on the investment side,
profile tenants, but you can do profile for as an investment profile for the property. So understanding what that looks like and what a profitability projection could look like.
Exactly.
So I think we also really do pride ourselves on just making sure that our clients feel supported. It's not as if we're just finding a tenant for you. We're really right alongside you through the entire journey. I mean, between finding the property that you're going to be investing in, but also assisting you with managing that relationship with your tenant throughout the term and understanding what your rights are, because it is very new to you, right? Being that we've been through it personally, we deal with it every day, whether we're landlords or not. So
yeah, we're filming in the office today, and you guys can't see off camera right now, but we have something written on the wall, and it's a FDR quote, and it says that real estate can't be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away, purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed with reasonable care. It is about the safest investment in the world. And I think that that's a true statement. It was made over, 80 years ago, but the reality is that the greatest, accumulations of wealth in the history of the world, it hasn't been .com, it hasn't been oil, it has been real estate. And so I think that's an important consideration. And it doesn't mean that you need to go out and buy blocks of apartment buildings. It just means that, one really, well-researched, carefully purchased property can change the entire financial trajectory of your family's future
Absolutely.
over
Yeah.
time. And I think that's an important, and I think it's been one of the greatest honors of my career to be able to work with so many clients who are, didn't come from money, don't
Yep.
have parents that can hand them, deposits, didn't come from wealth, worked really, really hard to be able to establish themselves both, first through a single family, like their own residence, and then later on through an investment property, and to really see how their financial path has changed and how their future generations will benefit
Yep.
from the decisions that this one made. And it's the greatest gift that we can give to a generation, coming next to us, and the ability to have financial security. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
what a way to leave it.
I
And to
know.
share a panel of women talking on this topic as well too, which is, I think, so rare and wonderful. But it's an emerging trend,
Yeah,
young
sure.
women becoming landlords. And I think it's great. So, well, thank you guys for sharing your knowledge and your personal stories. I think
Yeah.
everybody is going
Thank
to
you.
find this hopefully as inspiring
Yeah.
as I do. And it's one of the reasons why I'm honored to have both of you guys on the teams. For our viewers watching at home, thank you for spending the time with us. This has been exciting, I think. And if buying investment real estate is something that has been on your mind, even if it's, a 5-year goal for you, we would love to unpack that with you and see whether or not you are the right fit. And if real estate is the right fit for your investment portfolio. So thank you guys for watching. Again, it's always an honor to be of service to you with all of your real estate questions. So if you do have one, please reach out. And of course, we are never too busy for your referrals. This has been Carol Foderick from the Carol Foderick Real Estate Group. Thank you for watching, and we will catch up with you again soon.